tired? No. It's been a while. A little rusty if you couldn't tell. But as far as like the people there, it's kind of funny. There's, well, it's not funny, but you know, in 2013, you know, there was a Boston bombing that happened, or the Boston Marathon bombing. And it was also the same year that these protests started in Ukraine. And I am like a huge Boston Red Sox fan. And when the bombing happened in Boston, you know, there was this incredible resolve of the people there to find the people who, you know, caused the explosions. And I feel that toughness and that grit is especially present also in like Eastern Europeans. So I think that like is a trait that I really admired. And you know, they've been having to deal with imperialism for so long. But the story of like, you know, these Cossacks, you know, they were warriors, they were headmen, they were, you know, I mean, like, there's no part of history that's like perfect, right? There's a lot of horrible things that happened in Ukrainian history, and there's still a lot of like, you know, terrible things that are happening there now. Like, I mean, you can have like a nationalist, like you have pride in your country and like, you know, want it to be an independent European state, but then there's also this dark side of like the nationalism and this sort of like rise of fascism that comes up. So I think that during the protests, one thing that like really struck me though was the tenacity of just showing up every day. It was sort of like the crowds just kept getting bigger and bigger, and when the violence hit the streets, they didn't turn away. They built barricades, they built shelter, they stayed, and that's, you know, they stayed there for, you know, I think that they ended up the last, I can't remember the exact date, but the last like barricade stayed almost a year after the protests had started. So I think that just that fighting spirit was just something that attracted to me too, but I don't know where it comes from. Probably bullies trying to fuck with your shit all the time. So that's my best guess.
Other questions? Corey.
How did your travels to Ukraine inform the book? How emotional did it feel? I'm not sure your timeline of when you started writing to visit. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so the question, I realize I should probably sort of like rephrase it for the people who can't hear. So the question is about how the traveling that I did for under fellowships and stuff like that for the book, how it influenced it. And so I started the book in 2016, and then I was fortunate enough to get a fellowship from the Virginia G. Piper Center for Creative Writing. Thank you. I got a research fellowship to go to Ukraine, and I ended up tacking on a trip to the Czech Republic as well. And I'd say that like that trip, like I'd written like a first draft of the book, and I wasn't completely sure I was going to ever like revisit it or if I was going to keep going. It was one of those things where, you know, I wanted to do a collection of short stories, but when I came back from Ukraine, and for me the moment was going into St. Michael's gold-domed monastery for the first time, because that's like the epicenter of like the story. That was like, that it became real to me. There's no other way to like say it other than like it felt less that I was writing fiction and more that like these people, and you know, as writers we use the word like, you know, people use the word like character, and that didn't ever feel right after I was in Kiev. And I was always drawn to the church because of there's a section in the book where I mentioned the last time that these bells had rang at St. Michael's, was just all the bells that they have there. It rang at Maidan for the first time in 800 years. And the last time they had rang the bells was when the Mongols were invading Kiev. And it really just struck me because it's sort of like at that time, it was to warn people, to safety. And that was against an invader, a foreign invader. And the fact that these bells were being rung again at St. Michael's against your own government was super moving to me. So I'd say that like the part of that really shook me was being in the church and it becoming real. And then also the Charles Bridge in the Czech Republic in Prague was another real moment for me, because there's a few scenes in the book where there's an attempted suicide, and there's some conversations on the bridge, like going across the bridge and seeing the figures that they have on there. It was sort of like the people at Maidan, like their story, Katja and Slava and Misha all became real in the church, and it was like Alexander became real when I was on the Charles Bridge. So, big difference.
Any other questions? One more.
Question is, what was the hardest part of the book to write? The hardest part, I think, was, there was something that was really, really hard. I think, okay, well, first of all, I'll just say that like the organization of the book, like took this beautiful collage of like all of these like cool, like snippets of writing styles and that sort of thing. But getting it in order was an absolute nightmare, to put it like quite bluntly. So one of my favorite parts of writing this book, actually, and a memory that will probably like stay in my mind forever, is Eric and I there's two folks that mostly run $2 Radio. There's Eric and his wife Eliza, and so Eric and I worked in the beginning stages of the book and did like a ton of revisions. So even like my draft that I submitted to them was like embarrassing. And so it was really like amazing to talk to Eric, because he had this like idea for Alexander to not just be this injured Soviet soldier, but to actually be the pianist at Maidan. That was like totally his idea, and I just loved it. And it was in our preliminary conversation to decide whether we were going to work together, and I just knew it was like going to be magic. So we did a lot of like the restructuring there, but the best part was we've done all of these revisions and everything like that, and it comes down to Eliza has now taken the reins, and we have to get like this book done by August 23rd. And it has to be to the printer. And so I think we were all just so busy, and Eliza was originally going to give me like her copy edits by the end of July, and that did not happen. And so we were coming up on like, it was the weekend before, which was like a complete like, it was very exhilarating. Like Eric had emailed me and congratulating me yesterday and everything. It was so like nice. And he was just like, I hope we can all just sit around and laugh about that crazy weekend, because it was just back and forth, like just sending things back, and it was great because like there would be certain things that like Eliza would mess up. So like at one point before we sent the proof in, it was like I'm looking at it and like the section that I actually read, the 1986, it was just like 1906, and I was like, or like 1980. 1908, and I was like, Eliza, where'd the 6 go? So it was little things like that, and but I also I think that overall, yeah, the structuring was really difficult, and but yeah, that was totally worth it. I also learned that I do not know at all the difference between lie and lay. So, but the good news is that your editor does. So, that was horrifying. There came a point where I was just going through the PDF and I was just sending her smiley faces for every mess up that, she's just it should be like here, it should be like here, and I'm just she had me just say okay, we'll go with that change, we'll go with that change. I just put smileys, I'm just everything's good, I don't know. But yeah, I'd say definitely the structure and just the revision process was very exciting.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me tonight, Kalani, and congratulations on this amazing book.
Cool, so thanks everybody for coming. Well, just a reminder, all your books are signed, but if you want to get them personalized, we can start lining up right here, and you can come up to the table and she can personalize them for you. And you still need to purchase a copy. The registers will be open a little bit longer up front, and you can definitely do that. We just ask before everyone leaves or before you get into the line, just you can fold your chairs if you want to get to the wall wherever there's space. That would be great. Thank you.